Bryce Silianoff, welcome to the Super Connector podcast.
Glad to be here, man.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Good to see you again.
Yes, it's been quite some time.
Yeah, so for the listeners, I wanted to say that we had a really cool thing that happened when we met each other, which was this phenomenon that we like to call old friends right away.
Yes, indeed. I think I've only seen you in person twice in my whole life, and yeah, that was definitely old friends right away. We met live painting at that funky little festival out at Rancho del Rio, and I think we met at a similar thing maybe like a year or so after that, and that's the last time I saw you.
Yeah, that was an extra weird one. I want to describe that experience a little bit for people. But let's first do a little bit of backstory, because as you said, we've only met twice actually in real life. So I want to know a little bit about you and who you are. So if you could give us first the astrological context. Where were you born? What year? And also, what are your signs?
All right. Yeah, I was born December 1st, 1992 in Denver, Colorado. I'm a Sagittarius sun, Pisces moon, Aquarius rising.
All right, cool. Aquarius rising. Yeah, that's right. We have that in common. So that's why probably why the old friends right away was able to happen pretty easily.
Exactly.
Rising sign being the surface level impression that you give when you meet people, the rising sign. But also, I found that another interesting perspective, which is that it's what we're becoming as we're evolving in this lifetime. So
yeah.
Seeing the nature of the rising sign can be a good way to look at where you're going. So do you have any thoughts on that Aquarian vision?
Oh yeah, things just keep getting weirder, you know. Just getting a little more elevated from my existence, floating somewhere up here while trying to ground down. But I think the world's maybe calling for some Aquarian energy, obviously, as we enter the age of Aquarius in some sense.
Yeah.
Feeling called to take my weirdness to the streets and find the others. So like two freaks of a feather flock together, like when I met you. So I was like, oh, of course, this man understands. I need not explain.
Amen to that. Take your weirdness to the streets. Somebody's got to do it.
Exactly. Someone's got to do it.
Yeah, we also have at the moment the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in the sign of Aquarius, which has been a massive societal transformation and process.
Yeah, I feel like we're just seeing the beginning of it. I feel like it hasn't even come out in the streets yet. It's still looking out the blinds in the window.
Yeah, well, it's pretty. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's the early stages. Despite, I mean, obviously we've been seeing some pretty significant unrest here in America, but also elsewhere in the country. I mean, elsewhere in the world. But then simultaneously having people literally forced to stay inside their houses looking out the blinds. What the hell's going on here, Bryce?
It's hard to say. Obviously, everything has its own karmic comeuppance, and we're seeing the results of things that have come before. But I think we're still in the astrological come up of just what this means for this country specifically, since that's where I'm at. I'll speak to that. And we're on the come up still. We're shaking in the chair, starting to get a little sweaty. Like, hey, are you guys feeling that? Like the boiling internal waters of unrest. It's ankle high in the streets, and it's rising internally.
We're feeling it, yeah. I'm feeling it. It's coming. So, what do you think? Where do you think we're going?
As a country, or as just humans on the space ball?
I'd be interested to hear both.
I am entirely unqualified to say where we're going as a country as a whole, because I live in such a tiny little piece. But I think we're just shifting the way we relate. The same way when you meditate, you're not stopping what's happening, you're changing your relationship to it. So I feel like in that way, we're taking a little bit of a sidestep in our relationship to being on this earth, being in this country, and really just trying to shift into like, we live together on a planet in a country, but are we living in community? Are we actually embracing that togetherness? And I at least hope that some of that is to come, that we're going to start learning what it's like to be neighbors, to love somebody but not like them, all those things, all those hippie things, you know.
Yeah, that good hippie stuff. Yeah, it's funny, you know, I think the hippies are right about a lot of things. They get a lot of flack, but they're really onto something with this whole peace and love concept, and you know, important things like growing your own food and taking LSD every once in a while, and you know, all that general maintenance stuff that you have to do for health.
The general maintenance. Yeah, I think we're entering a good period of general maintenance, you know? I feel like Saturn would agree. It's like time to check under the hood, time to look your bank account in the eyes, time to step forward in the future with some knowledge instead of some wishful thinking or fear. It's like, yeah, let's embrace the cold hard stone underneath and walk upon it.
Yeah, Saturn really has that power.
Ooh, yeah, as I enter my Saturn return, I can feel it in the air.
Oh, you are, huh? So your Saturn is in Aquarius then?
My Saturn is in Aquarius.
Your birth Saturn?
Yes, sir.
Interesting. All right. Any insights about that going on so far?
Oof. Well, just in my own life, I've just been in a transition towards, you know, more and more ownership of my being, not necessarily just externally, but like, you know, taking responsibility for karmas of the past, stepping into the future with a little bit less victim mentality than maybe I was used to, or doing in my previous years here on Spaceball. And I don't know, I can taste it. I can taste just the edge of it coming around.
Yeah, coming into it. Well, that's good to let go of that victim mentality. Man, that is a tricky habit that we seem to have, so many of us.
It's sneaky, man. It has a lot of different iterations that just pop up in different masks, and some of them are pretty attractive. It's hard to let go of some of them, you know.
Yeah, so totally. I mean, it's so easy to really identify with the ways that we feel we've been wronged, or the ways that we feel things are unfolding unfairly.
Just even at the base level of, oh, I am an incarnated being in a body that I can't remember choosing. You can take it all the way down to like, who put me in this form? Who put me in this seamless reality that never stops moving?
Yeah, that's something I remember a lot about talking with you, as you seem to reference that almost like shock of being in a body or being born into a human form quite often, which I think is common for Aquarian people. There's definitely the Aquarian alien.
I feel it, man. It's something that's been with me my whole life that I'm, you know, never can quite shake, because it wasn't something I thought about. It was something I always felt, and now it's just finding all the ways it's playing out in my silly little life here. But yeah, being embodied, that's, you know, I'm not an ascension, I'm in a descension. I gotta get grounded, put some rocks in my pockets.
So you got some quams you're carrying around with you?
Exactly, many, in little satchels all around my astral self.
Good. So, do you think couple questions there. One of them is do you think you are coming to feel at home in this body, or is this kind of a continuing feeling of surprise and alienation from the you know, the strangeness of being in a form?
Both. It's like a paradox, you know, the more embodied I get, the more holistic that feeling of strangeness gets. Instead of just being mental, it just goes into the basic things. It goes into how weird it is to just have the reliability of this world. Its order, its laws, its structure is reliable, and that becomes stranger and stranger, and starts to just set the alarm off of complete confusion with what this is, who's in here with me, who's in the giant room we call life, and what are we all doing here? Whose dream is this? And you know, it gets weirder, but I think I'm getting more at home in the strangeness. I'm building a little nice corner.
Yeah, good. What sort of tactics do you use to make yourself at home?
I did my first like 10-day silent meditation retreat last year. I did the Vipassana thing, jumped in the Goenka fire, and while that was incredibly challenging and had its own little things that weren't quite in tune with where I was at, that really helped. Just like scanning the body for sensation, getting in there, doing yoga, exercise, and all the things that like you know on the periphery are good for you, and just starting to really like take those on as my practice and trying to just ground in all the ways I know how.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like your zodiac combination is not the most grounded. I mean, Aquarius, Pisces, and Sagittarius are both, or the three of them are I would say fairly out there in a number of ways. Like there's the kind of like the visionary, the philosopher, the dreamer, the artist, the rebel. That type of archetype is is within those three. And then there's a centaur archer. I guess they're kind of grounded, but they're not exactly a normal human.
No, you know, I got that Capricorn stellium in there, and you'd think that would help, but well, that has yet to be seen.
So which planets are in Capricorn then?
Neptune, Uranus, and what's the other one? I think Libra, or not Libra. No, my Libra's Jupiter. Sorry, I'm
Venus.
Visual thinking. Venus. There we go. Venus Capricorn. Yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
Yeah, those. I guess a couple of those are pretty out there, and then Venus and Capricorn is a kind of a difficult element for because of the nature of Capricorn and the nature of Venus not being exactly on the same page.
I feel that one, man. That one gets me all the time.
There's a pragmaticness about Capricorn that is doesn't exactly flow with how Venus likes to roll. So a question about that, like do you find comfort and joy in things like structure and like completing tasks or like building towards something, like the mountain climber, the mountain goat of seeing a distant vision and moving towards it step by step?
Yeah, especially with things I like. I mean, that's painting has that built into it. Playing music has that built into it, of like taking an impulse and putting it through a form so that it comes out the other end a more rich, completed thing. You know, even back when I used to race mountain biking, I used to love biking uphill. It's just like, give me a challenge that I can literally see the end, and I'm just gonna push into it.
That's awesome. I don't know if I remember that about you. Do you know I'm a mountain bike racer too?
I did indeed, yes.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's a really a good vision for the Capricorn soul. Climb that mountain.
It's fun when it's a challenge, but then you are doing that in your relationships, you know, like doesn't quite have the same energy of like, let me bike up this mountain of our relationship, and everyone else is like, can you just have a little joy?
What is this? Yeah. So the Pisces moon, though, is that right? Pisces moon.
Yep.
So that's a good thing to tap into in terms of really connecting with the oceanic love of yourself and another. Pisces, I would say, has the ability to love maybe more deeply than any other sign. If we had to rank them, I don't think it's something that's ranked by sign at all, but I have noticed through a lot of anecdotal evidence that that Pisceans tend to feel things very, very deeply. And I like to think about that as when we're looking at the three water signs, we have Cancer the crab being obviously this crustacean that's on the, they can be on the land or on the water, and they're kind of, you know, they're on the beach during the full moon in the darkness is what I like to think about the crab, but they have that hard outer shell, which kind of like, we'll say, like protects the sensitive inner core of the crab, and they have their pincers. And if you think about Scorpio, the second water sign, they have a pretty similar kind of armored car vibe about them. Except the scorpion doesn't have as much of like a clear, soft center. They have it, but they will do almost anything they can to prevent you from knowing that it's there.
I think that's the truth.
And then moving on to the fish. The fish, as opposed to being armored in that way, they are in the ocean, like just swimming in the water, and water representing the feelings and emotions, intuitions, the world of psychic awareness. So there's that total immersion that comes with the Piscean soul, and also not only an exploration of that emotional landscape, but also like sort of the full range of interests from, you know, science and math to music and art and everything in between. There's like that sort of understanding of the whole picture that comes with that sign.
Yeah, I would call my Pisces moon the lost in the sauce sign. You know, like, I'm swimming in the sauce. It's where I live, but I'm also a little lost in the sauce. You know, I can go there, and I can tap into the holistic, looking back through all the signs kind of energy. But you know, more often than not, I'm just deep in an unnameable thing, and you know, it's hard to see the forest for the trees when it's all water.
Yeah, it's hard to even know you're in the water when you're a fish.
Exactly.
I remember, that's another thing I remember from when we're at festivals together, is you're just saying, like, just remember, don't get lost in the sauce. And somebody had given you that advice, and it was very meaningful to you.
It also comes from some experiences where I clearly got lost in the sauce and had to light the beacons and find my way back home.
Yeah. Would you like to share one of those?
Yeah, I don't know if did I ever tell you my Sonic Bloom 2016 story? I feel like I must have at some point.
You did, yeah.
Yeah, I can give a brief overview of that story.
Yeah, let's hear it.
It's a energetic, intense story, so I'll try to find the most skillful way to say this. But I came to Sonic Bloom 2016 by myself with like no friend group to paint for the first time I ever went to a festival. I knew a couple of the artists there just through like acquaintances, like I'd met them once at a gallery or something, but I wasn't like, didn't have my crew there. And I had taken LSD a couple times before in my life. You know, I'd had some big transformational trips, but I'd never taken a lot of LSD at once. And I'm at this festival, everybody around me is tripping, and I get offered some liquid LSD, which I'd never taken. I'd always eaten paper. And they didn't tell me that they were taking the dropper and rubbing it on their hand and licking their hand. And me, being a fool, my tarot archetype of all time, took the whole dropper, like half full dropper, and just took the whole thing at once. And then I was like, oh, I want to make sure I get a little more. So I took another drop. And no one saw me do it. So I go about my business, and about 15 to 20 minutes in, I'm like, ooh, okay, I'm feeling it. Like, this is a little quick. I'm like checking my phone. I'm like, I took it at 6:30. It's 6:45. Cool. Wait, I took it. Oh God. And it's starting to hit me, and I'm starting to get the shakes of the universe, the frequencies coming up. I look to somebody I'm with, and I'm like, hey, I need some help or something. I need to like move out of this area because I'm in the middle of all the live painters. It's all the sound. And they're like, sure, dude. Like they were giving me a little concern. Like you know, we don't know you, but you seem like you're gonna be all right. Maybe you just need to like move around. So they walked me to my car. And on the way to my car, they're kind of telling me, hey, like some of our friends have taken this and we've all been good. Like, you're going to have a great time. Except our one friend, Trey. He had a similar experience where he got a little overwhelmed, a little lost in the sauce. And as they're telling me that, who do we see next to my car but Trey? This man I've never met pops out and he's like, oh, hey, what's up, buddy? Oh, and they're telling him like, yeah, Bryce took a little too much L. He's like, he's gonna be good, but he's having a little time right now. And this man just comes up, looks at me, goes, oh, cool. You're just having a little schizophrenic break. It's cool. This totally happened to me. And I'm like, okay, that can't possibly be the news I needed at the moment because I'm just at the beginning, you know, like telling me I'm riding the clown car into insanity, front row seat.
Jesus.
And they're walking in my car. They're trying to get me to do all these things. Like, hey, try to make a funny face. So I would like be like, nope, it's not working. Sorry. And I'd get like start flipping between deep come up to like my lucidity. So I'd start being like, okay, somebody passed me some toothpaste. I got to calcify this pineal gland back up. Like, this is not happening. And they're like, you're good. You're joking. See, you totally know what's going on. And all of a sudden I'm like looking at things. Mountains are just melting entirely. Everything is orange and green. And my thoughts and my visuals started mixing where I would look at a thing, have a thought, and there would be no discernible boundary, like the kind of boundary you would normally carry of like, here's my inner monologue, there's my vision. Instead, it was just one fluid thing. I get to my car and they're kind of like, you know, we don't know what to do for you. We're tripping too. Like, we think we need to take you to the help tent. And I was like, doesn't sound great, but I'm realizing I came there alone. Like these people aren't responsible for me. They can't help me anyway. So I'm like, take me to the help tent, take me to Zendo. So they take me there and I just instantly start tripping so hard that I start to lose the boundary between the shore and the ocean. I am in the sauce. I'm going. You know, and so I'm starting to loop. They take me into the help tent. I start thinking I'm actually dying. And so I just start going between these like few sections of a loop where I would think I was literally dying, start yelling. They would take me into the medical tent, put the blood pressure thing on my arm, shine the flashlight in my face, and be like, we don't know what you took. We don't know who you are. We don't know what to do for you. And so they just sent me to the tripper's den where the people just sit with you and let you have your time. And I started to lose it. So I started to think like I had already died and I was in some sort of bardo zone called medicinal mindfulness, which was the name of the Zendo people helping me. And I was like, what a funny place to die. It looks identical to where I died. And also all these people have little walkie-talkies and they're being very stern with me, like very angry machine elves, like breathe. And I would start looping and I'd be like, I'm dying. And they're like, no, you're not. You're going to be fine. And I'd be like, fuck you. You don't know me. I just want to be sober. And then they're like, you know, you're going to be fine. This is the beginning of a great night for you. And I'd be like, you don't know me. I'm dying. And then all of a sudden I would snap and be like, my name is Bryce. I took too much LSD. I'm going to be fine. Just you wait. And they're like, great. We love this. And then I would get very childish. I would start crying. I would go through like every discernible human emotion within like 30 seconds of each other in a loop for hours. So I'd be like incredibly angry and fierce and just like rage. Then I would get very childish and like curl up in a little ball and start like crying. And then I would get very curious and like into my environment, which would oscillate between like pure wonder, mystical enlightenment, erotic feelings. And then I would just think like, oh, fuck, I'm dying. I'm going insane. And then it would just loop. And they would be like taking me to the porta potty through all the people in the festival. And then they'd take me back to the tent, and it would loop for like 4 hours I spent in that tent just coming up. I wasn't even at the peak yet. So at some point, after like deep insanity of being in the tent with other people that were tripping, they would bring like people in a K-hole in and set them in front of me while I was just like a rambling madman. Like there'd be a dude who couldn't talk just staring at me, and I'm like 2 inches from his face, like, how did we get in here? Who are we? And he'd just be like, what? And like they had a couple different volunteers help me. And as I start to become more stabilized in my state, I realize I didn't die. These are real people who are volunteers. These aren't even being paid to deal with my wook ass. They're just like waiting to go party on their Saturday night. And I just start to realize like, oh my God, what angels just walked me through the Bardo zone to here. So I get this girl to walk me back to my car, change clothes, and I go back to my easel to paint. And they don't know who I am. So they see me pick up a paintbrush and they're like, oh, hey, don't do that. Like, oh God, you're losing it, dude. You can't go paint on people's paintings. And I had my name on my easel. I pull my wallet out and show them like, this is where I was before I came to you. And they're just like, oh, bless your heart. Good luck. And I realized at that moment, I'm looking around, oh, I'm at the top of the mountain. I've never been up here. I've never tripped this hard in my life. That was the come up, not the peak. And I tripped for like 36 hours straight, 24 of them. I had full visuals and was like, didn't sleep, fully lucid. Just, I spent most of the next day in my car, just looking at plants and drawing them. And just like being like, if I was going to spend this time in here, I'm going to study it like a scientist, because, you know, can't waste this good visual candy and this good wisdom. But yeah, there's a part when I was in the tent too, where I had this whole thought of like enlightenment, spiritual wisdom. I just want to be on the earth again, to be grounded with my friends. You know, like, what did I come in this room for? I walked in and completely forgot. I'm like seeing Buddha faces connected out of my head, Alex Gray style, and being like, huh, what? Huh? I'm like squinting with my third eye. Like, what? What is this? What's this? I don't know. I'm not sure what to do with that, and put it in my pocket for later.
And here it is.
But yeah, that's the condensed version. There's some things in that story that go for miles.
Wow. That's an incredible story, and very poetically described, I must say.
That one will get all the people's hearts going, man. I tell that story to people who've tripped before, and it's like everybody starts to elevate. And I'm like, all right, time to put the astral rocks back in your shoes, pull you down from the ground.
On the ground. Well, thanks for sharing it, because that's quite a story. And I think so. Something that's really important for me is talking about psychedelic experience and not just the joys of it, but also the dangers. Because I think we went through this phase where we were entirely focused on the dangers, and we weren't talking about any of the, the many potential positive effects of these things. So I think it's really important to discuss them in a balanced way. And especially with LSD, because it's so powerful, you have that potential of going over the edge pretty easily if your dosage is off. It's like the difference between 1 and 2, 3 hits, and like, say, I don't know how many that was, maybe 10 or 15 or whatever, is like kind of like what that guy said, is the difference between like having a beautiful spiritual experience and seeing what it's like to have a schizophrenic break.
Yeah, and that you realize with LSD specifically that there's like a plateau you can hit, but there's really no ceiling. There's no like, this is the most extreme it's going to get. It just goes with you. And LSD as a substance seems to have a little bit of a clean slate, where say like cannabis, mushrooms, DMT have a little bit of an energy of trying to guide you to around and like inner teacher. LSD is like, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? We'll drive you there. And if you're not, if you don't know that, or you're not good at both setting an intention and then checking in on that intention during an experience, it can really just like take you up and down for a ride, because it's like it's free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very important bit of information there. I like one thing that are you familiar with Stan Groff?
Yes. Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes from him is that he talks about it as a non-specific thought amplifier. But I would expand that to be like a, you know, thoughts and feelings amplifier, just like a general amplifier of whatever you know is coming up in your experience. And yeah, that can be if you don't know that, or if you go over the edge, that can be completely overwhelming.
It gets pretty bad when you swallow the magnifying glass, and then everyone's like, well, what did you want to look at? And you're like, well, I can't stop thinking about insanity itself. And they're like, well, have fun. And I, spending 12 hours like just pondering the boundary spectrum between insanity and sanity, and where they kind of touch back together at the end, and they're farther apart here. Yeah, it was a bit of a headache.
Yeah, there's some real genius and incredible creativity right in that, like, you know, border zone of where they come together to meet. And there's such an interesting intersection between madness and creativity, genius.
Yeah, I think even taking small amounts of LSD, that becomes very clear. Like, what I call madness has to do with my reference point to sanity. And when I move the reference point, all of a sudden creativity is just pouring out like a side effect. If I just let go of this thing that's telling me I'm going insane.
Yeah, that's a good perspective as well. Man, that is wild. I've never gone there. So a little more about my astrology. I have Libra Scorpio, as you know, the right on the edge cusp, and that's one meaning of the acronym LSD is Libra Scorpio drama. Aquarius rising, but I have Taurus moon, and I think that is a real blessing, because it's like it's an emotional grounding place. It's like, yeah, it's the stability. I have that groundedness, and I'm able to bring that to other people as well. And I think also with my psychedelic experiences, I don't know if it's that or some other element of caution that I have, but I've spent a lot of time exploring the like low, medium levels, but I'm very cautious about going over the edge like that. And I have been over the edge a couple times, but not in that manner.
You know, I wouldn't recommend it. No, it was like one part of my being, maybe my subconscious, was like, well, you know, I'd always wanted to know what it was like to go there, but my conscious mind was never going to let me do that, with good reason. I was never going to say, give me 10 to 15 hits of LSD at once, like, because that's not how you do that as a person who knows what's up. And there was just another part of my entire being that came in and just pushed me from behind right into the abyss. And, you know, I'm grateful for it, but that trip itself was incredibly traumatic and had side effects that I deal with to this day, just in my sensitivity to things now, both substances, environments. I'm incredibly sensitive, and I don't always that's kind of hard to handle when you haven't always been that way. And all of a sudden you find yourself like at a show or in a certain emotional environment, and it's just so much. You know, someone puts a song on the radio, and I'm just like, ooh, okay, wow, like right in it, you know, in a very LSD way, where you're almost forgetting the context of a thing and just feeling it raw. You're like, ooh, weird. And like, what is that? Oh, it's music. Cool. Yeah. I remember. So that's kind of carried through, where I have a little bit of a heightened sensitivity to things now. including substances. So like I took LSD a little bit after that, but never even like a 1-tab dose. I would eat the corner of a tab and feel it like I had taken 2 whole hits, which, that's part of the story of the second time we met. But
yeah, that was some strong stuff on that occasion.
Ooh, yeah, but yeah, so there's definitely some side effects. I didn't come out of that, the same person. I walked through a door, went through the bardo, and walked out just a subtly different person that I can tell internally. And not everyone's ready for that. And that's not something everybody wants when they trip. So, I would always say, like, start small, enjoy it, like bask in taking small doses more often, do it what you feel, because once you go over that edge, that can really change your relationship to substances in general.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's a good description of why things like paper acid and gel tabs are a lot more safe than the liquid. It's pretty hard to accidentally take 15 hits of paper acid.
I'm going to agree with you, and then I'm also going to just recognize the part of myself that's just a total idiot. It was like, I don't know, I wasn't counting, Yeah, the fool that persists in his folly become wise is a saying that I hold close to my heart because of that, where it's like, you can play stupid games and you're going to learn a lot, but there's other ways to read the book. You don't have to swallow the whole thing at once.
Yeah, no doubt. Complete 36-hour dissolution of all boundaries.
Yeah, you gotta rebuild. It's like remodeling a house, and instead of starting in a room, you just flatten the whole house. And then you're just sitting there as it's starting to snow going, I better build this house or I'm going to be cold tonight. So you just start building.
Winter's coming.
Winter is coming, my friend.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely I know what you mean about kind of getting the physical effects of that story. It's just like, it's very visceral, and anybody who's taken LSD, and even if you haven't, I think you can probably feel that feeling. I just wanted to make one more note on that is for those of you out there, if you ever see somebody who is kind of going into an experience like that, you don't need to tell them that they're having a schizophrenic break. Like, you can just go ahead and withhold that information and they'll figure it out.
And to my own credit, I don't think I was. I think I was just having the normal experience you have when you take 10 plus hits of acid at one time. It's not like anything else you've had, so you label it insanity. But I was incredibly lucid. Like, I knew in my heart of hearts, like, I'm going to make it through this. And I did. Not saying there wasn't moments of deep, deep questioning, like, will I ever be the same sane version of myself? But I knew, like, when someone tells you you're going insane, you don't really have a lot of options. You're not like, oh, I guess I'll give up. It's like, you're like, okay, noted, cool, thank you, moving on. Also, have you guys seen the ground? It's entirely made of fractals. Check it out.
Check it out. And they're moving and breathing.
doing weird things, man. I had some visuals on that trip that I'll never forget. Just staring at things and just asking the universe for more on purpose, and being like, what else you got? And it would just complexify, explode. I'm looking at the ground and it's doing the mandala fractal that it loves to do on psychedelics. And I'm like, this is comforting. That lets me know I'm tripping. I'm looking at it and the fractals are getting like more deep and they're starting to break apart. Underneath it was this electric red, green, yellow snake made of just light, just shifting underneath the plates of the ground. And then I realized I've been staring at one spot in the ground for 20 minutes in a group of people. I better start moving.
Wow. Yeah, you see some people really in the thick of it at those festivals sometimes. You're like, oh boy, that guy walked through the door.
Yeah, to give the other word of warning, which is when you see someone in those experiences, those people just kind of need to know they're okay, and maybe like give them a hug, give them some water, give them a hug, because there's not really you can do for somebody in that experience, but make them feel like it's okay that they're there.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a big thing I learned during that, was it was really helpful to have people around me that just were like, you're totally fine. We know you're deep in the ocean. You're great. We're sitting on the surface in the boat, ready to pull the deep sea diver up when it's time. And
Yeah.
Instead of people telling you like, "Ooh, it's bad you did that," or "We're concerned you're in there." When I was in the medical tent and they were like shining the flashlight in my face, it was hilarious because on LSD you can see right into somebody's emotional landscape, like on their face.
Yeah.
You can just tell what they mean, even if they say something else. So this woman's looking at me like so disappointed. Like she's never taken drugs. You can see it in her face. She has no idea why she's doing this like Wook patrol at midnight on a Saturday in the middle of like the Colorado landscape. And she's looking at me like so bored, but so concerned. Like I'm going to die and she's just waiting for me to die. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of laughing because I'm like, this isn't helping. And this really bored, like medical intern keeps coming over to me with Gatorade. He's just like sick of my shit. He's like, sip it, don't pound it. And I'm just mocking him. Like, no, sip it, don't pound it. I'm like, I'm not stupid. I'm just fucking dying. It was like,
Oh
you can
my
feel
God.
everyone's concern, everyone's feelings. And the people that helped were the people that just looked at me like, this is just the beginning of the greatest night of your life. And I was like, I don't believe you, but I like your style.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that at least. That's good advice as well, for sure. I think a lot of people who haven't been there before they can be really awkward around somebody in that type of state, and they have a tendency to say the wrong things or like shine a flashlight in your face. It's like, even if I'm completely sober, I don't want a flashlight shine in my face. Like my eyes are sensitive, and then or coming up to you and being like, "Ooh," like, do my hands look weird?
in the medical tent or like in the help tent when I was in there, because they had different volunteers do their shifts. This girl comes in and starts. I kept making this joke of like, "When's Tipper playing?" And they're like, "Tomorrow." And it was like my life raft as a joke. I would do all my looping and I'd be like, "When's Tipper playing?" "Tomorrow." Yeah, and everyone would be like, "Yes, he's getting lucid." And this girl came in and heard me say that once and was like, "Oh, Tipper?" And she starts playing Tipper on her phone to me. And I'm just looking at her like, what makes you think this is the move right now? Like, you're playing Dreamsters on the phone, and it's just causing this crazy psychedelic emotional thing in me because of my relationship to that song. And I'm just like laughing, like, what a funny thing. Like, this isn't quite what I'm talking about, but I appreciate the enthusiasm. Like, it had that feeling of someone being like, "Oh, you're tripping really hard. Listen to this. You're gonna love it." And you're like, I don't need anything extra psychedelic. I am pure LSD at this point. Like, I don't need the cartoon version of it put on me, but thank you. Like, I'll put the costume on tomorrow when my ego comes back.
That is something that happens. There's a lot of like interaction with cartoon versions that goes on. Did we ever talk about the cartoon self?
I feel like we might have touched on it, but give me a little refresher, because this sounds like something I would love.
Yeah, that's something that, so when I go out at festivals, especially, and have taken some psychedelics, usually mushrooms or LSD, I basically feel like everybody around is dressed up as a caricature of themselves, like a cartoon version of themselves. People have their eyes super wide, and they have all these adornments that describe certain things about their personalities, and kind of like they're signaling some type of archetype or some type of character. Like you have the pirates and the and the kitties and like the nutty professor and like the, you know, the fairies and the dancers and the like, you know, all of these different like amazing characters coming out in people. And I think it's really beautiful to watch. Like I love that part about festivals, because it's like this self that we're not allowed to share or feel shy about sharing in the ordinary world is all of a sudden just like broadcasting super powerfully. And I just love to watch it, and I love enacting it in myself as well, because when I do it, when I get dressed up to go out on those nights, like I can tell that I'm doing that same thing, and that it is like an expression of me and who I am, and yeah, I just love it.
I think me and you resonate on that, and especially when I met you, at both like being true madmen, like we met and we're like a good mirror for each other, where I was like, I totally understand like what I'm seeing, the energy behind this person that I don't know. Because when I met you, you have an incredibly silly energy when I've met you at festivals. Yeah. And then a deep sincerity behind it. But the silliness is like, it's completely like known. You're not fooling yourself. You're just like juggling and wearing all the scarves and passing out objects. And it's just this like fun cartoon game. And I deeply resonate with that, especially at shows. You know, I'm like putting on this true costume. I'm wearing like a top hat and a blanket and I'm stepping into this Mad Hatter archetype. And then I go home and I'm still tripping, and I'm like, okay, take that costume off, put on my Bryce costume. Yes, I am an artist. I am a thinker. I am a person of the earth. You know, put on all my little suits. And that's something psychedelics are beautiful for, which is realizing you're never going to get out of wearing costumes. So you might as well have a little bit of fun with it.
Yeah, choose your costume wisely. Bring some fun. Yeah, just speaking that out loud is giving me a really like warm and nostalgic feeling about that part of me, because he's been fairly dormant, I would say. You know, I'm a relatively new father. We're in this like crazy pandemic where the world is kind of shut down and people are afraid to talk to each other, and that shit's dragging out, man. Like I'm excited about releasing the the nutty professor once again. That's what I think. Man. I put that one out there because I do think that's one of the ones that I have. Like I would have my like kind of like silly scarf, and even like a professor's jacket and a tie sometimes. Like I get a little bit formal, but in a silly kind of way. And yeah, you're right. It was always like this really fun game of like, you know, playing this character, like, because when you're an artist at a festival, you're painting at a festival, you're really showing a part of yourself, and there's like just a continuous stream of people coming by to like visit and comment on, like appreciate or not appreciate like who you are and what you're making. And it's like, it's very vulnerable, but it's also very beautiful and exciting. It's a performance, you know?
Yeah, I feel like I learned a lot from being around you in live painting environments where there were other people doing their live painting experience, and you watch how they can pull energy to themselves and how they wield that power of like, I'm the incredibly serious artist, or I'm the most trippy. You had this fun energy of like inviting people in with this silly energy, and then giving them these amazing stories about your paintings and about the meaning of what was in front of them, but also like keeping it incredibly light in this balance that was like very inspiring to me, where I was like, what a force of nature, where, you know, you're juggling and you're giving people little clams out of your pocket, and then you're like, come sit here and let me tell you how every part of this painting has a meaning and a story, that's deeply rooted in archetypes, your life, my life, all of ours. And that's something I have never forgot from the first time I met you. And then the second time I was on the other side where you're pulling me out with the silliness and then deeply grounding me with some sincerity of like, you see me, I'm having fun. You can have fun too. But you got to be a little bit easier on yourself, my friend.
Yeah, I remember that one. That one got pretty serious at times.
That was a very weird. That was a very, very weird event in and of itself. Even without my emotional landscape in the picture, that event is like stained in my visual memory for some of the things that happened there.
Yeah, I'd say it's a good time to go into that. We can't just throw that mystery out there. But I want to say thank you for saying that. Those kind words. I appreciate that. And like I said, that's sort of a part of me that's been a little bit dormant recently. So it's beautiful to have that reminder and be like, oh yeah, like this, that's within me. And for me, like I was always surprised when the artists like didn't want to talk to people who were coming up to their works, and I just like, upon observing the many different people and types, realized like how very different we are in terms of how we relate to our art and how we share it. And for me, that storytelling aspect is absolutely like I spent way more time telling stories and interacting with people than I would actually painting. I always joke that it was like what I'm going to do here is I'm going to spend the weekend dancing around my painting and talking to strangers and making them into friends. Like that's that's what I'm going to do. And like maybe I'll get a little work done on the painting in between, like, you know, beautiful interactions with new friends. So yeah, let's get into that. The May meltdown. That was what the hell.
So I guess to give a little background, I met you at this festival, very small gathering of friends called More Dope Beats out in Rancho del Rio in 2016 or 2017. I think 2016.
16, I believe. And that's Rancho del Rio is on the upper Colorado River. It's a beautiful kind of venue for various things, and outside of, I guess it was pretty close to Edwards, Colorado.
Yeah, and we were the only two painters at this very small little gathering of just basically like homies throwing a little elaborate party, I would say, like a well-thrown party, not like a mid-range between a festival and a rager. And it was very well organized. We were the only two painters, and we spent a lot of that weekend just having fun, pure joy. I like wasn't hanging out with you directly for the whole thing, but I had a deep resonance with you right away. Fast forward to the next year, we both get invited to paint at another event from the same people in Hartselle, Colorado, which is essentially in the middle of nowhere outside of South Park.
Yeah, absolutely in the middle of nowhere.
And so like I got there ahead of you. I was one of the first people from outside of the core group of people throwing it to show up. And to paint the picture, I'm driving up and I'm driving into the middle of nowhere, and my spidey sense is tingling. It's like, hey, we're out here. This could be very fun. This could be anything. As I drive up, I see there's just two couches and a TV sitting in the middle of an empty field with some people surrounded by like some pallets on the ground, and I see a bunch of cars parked. And I'm like, well, that must be where I'm going. I pull up. There is no stage set up yet, and there's just about 10 people in their younger 20s drinking beer, watching a bunch of people play like old Sega games on this TV in the middle of nowhere. And it's getting to sundown. So my concern level is going up of like, okay, this isn't what they had last year. This isn't very organized. What am I getting into? And, you know, I get out of my car. I'm trying to just ground into this environment of chaos. Like, I'm starting to just talk to different people there. They're like, oh, we came from Michigan to play this festival. And I'm like, oh yes, this festival, this festival, cool. You mean the stage that's the palette stage that is being built and painted right in front of me? This festival, cool. All right, what time's your set? You know, just kind of joking around, like, oh. And I, you know, it's coming to my consciousness that everyone here is just trying to party, and so I'm just like, well, I'll stay the night. I'll see it into the next day. I knew you were coming, so I had this beacon of like you being the only person I knew that was coming, apart from the people that had asked us to come, which weren't close friends of mine. And so I set up my easel, I set up my tent, and I'm just trying to get in the zone. And I think you showed up at like 10:30, 11 at night.
I showed up as the sun was going down.
Yeah, okay.
And so being I don't know what the fuck I was thinking, but I pulled out my car, parked it basically like right next to the speaker. Didn't set up my tent. It was windy as fuck for the whole time. We'll get into that a little bit more, but I pull up my car basically right next to the speaker. Don't set up my tent because I don't know. And then I basically set up my painting stuff. And as soon as I set up my painting stuff, like just finishing having it set up, this guy comes up to me with some LSD. That's what that's what I remember. That was my arrival. And this was as he said, Grateful Dead family LSD, which if you're familiar, maybe some it's notorious, I guess would be a good way to say it.
It was a lot. And I, up to this point in my life in general, at that time, I hadn't been really drinking or smoking weed or partying. But when I showed up there, I had like decided, you know, this is a lot. This is a very weird event. I'm gonna have a couple beers. I'm gonna just like try to go with the current of this event instead of staying in my little zone of fear and uncomfort. So I'm drinking some beer. I had smoked a little weed, and I was like feeling it because I hadn't been doing that in a while. So by the time you got there, I was already a little spicy. You know, I put the hot sauce on, and you showed up. You're like, I'm not even going to set up my tent. We're just going to go. Like, we're just going to paint. We got this. And I was like, oh, cool, great. And by the time the guy came around with the old family jewels, I was just in a certain mind state where, like, you know, when you give me a little liquid courage, LSD is a whole nother thing. Sounds great. Like, give me the LSD. I'm feeling good. So he gives you some, and then you're like, hey, can you give some to my friend? And I was like, oh, you know, sure, I'll take some. So he gives me a little tab, and I nibbled the corner off it, put the rest in my pocket, and then kind of forgot that I had taken LSD because I was drinking. So as I started to come down from being drunk, I started to come up on LSD, and it's like, I think we took the L at like 11. So the timing, being in the middle of the night, in the middle of an empty field, was a real weird place to have that interaction, which I'd never had, where all of a sudden, like, the depressant aspect of drinking is hitting in as I'm like starting to shoot off in the rocket. And I'm like, wait, what? What's going on? And I start to look around, and it was like so cold and wet that like when we would paint, it wouldn't do anything. It would just like melt on the thing and freeze and stay liquid. And I remember getting to this thing with you where your easel is like flat and you could spin it. And we were just like putting raw paint on and spinning the easel around, and people were coming over, and we were kind of like handing them a brush and like, try it. It's fun. I promise. And like,
wow, you know, look at this paint.
Yeah, like, oh, paint. What is paint? And I remember this girl who was also tripping with us, like, who would just come over to our ESO, like tripper magnetism, like, oh, you guys are on my frequency. She would come over and I would kind of mess with her. Like, I'd put some paint on my brush and I'd make a move and we would just stand there and watch it like drip. And she would just like lose it. Like she thought I was doing some sort of magic. And I was just laughing because I'm like, this is insane. Like nothing's happening. I can't. And like you're handing me glitter, and I'm taking handfuls of glitter and throwing them in the paint, and just like, ooh, okay, okay. I really like how that ties the room together.
I remember you being like, I think I just spent the entire night just painting this whole painting gray. You know?
Yeah, I had like one moment where it was like beautiful.
Mixing.
I was deeply impressed with my holographic gray at one point, where it was just completely covered in glitter and looked like this digital, like holographic Pokemon card of the void, where there's nothing in it and everything in it. And I was like, you know, deeply in my LSD trickster energy, like, of course, I come here to make a painting, but I really painted nothing. And it's everything.
And they think it's a painting.
Yes. And meanwhile, the whole time I'm like going, I keep having to like, you know, walk to the porta potty. And then in the porta potty, as is often the case, I'm like starting to realize where I'm at. And I'm like, oh my God, I am tripping so hard. And I'm like pulling the tab out like I only ate the corner. This is insane. Like I'm in it. I'm deep. And like I'm starting to like kind of berate myself through my notes app in my phone. I'm like one part of me writing a note to the other part of me being like, what have you done? How could you have done this to us? Why did you take this acid when you were this drunk? Like, you fool, you absolute fool. And so I'm doing that as I keep going in between worlds. And I remember it's like 5 a.m, and the guy who invited us out there is on a lot of different substances. I don't have the list of which ones, but he was a rather intense energy, and he keeps coming up to us and just mumbling very, very troubling things like, oh, that dude over there, man, I swear to God, I'm going to kill him. I'm just going to kill him. I swear to God. And like, he's like, you got my back. You got my back. You guys are good. I love you guys. Like, you guys are good. And me and you are just kind of like, got to maintain the joy frequency. Can't get sucked into the drama. like we're elevated. We're not going anywhere. We're staying right here on cloud 9. Don't touch me. You know, and I'm starting to realize
about his caricature a little bit too. Do you remember what he was wearing?
Yes, and to paint a picture, when I showed up, he was also wearing the same thing. So I show up, he's wearing like a panda, one of those raver hats with the big long, like earpiece tassel things, and it's like a big panda hat. As I get there, before anything had even started, I'm sitting on a couch where they're playing video games, and I'm realizing that I'm sitting in a very tense business arrangement where he is pulling a knife on like a 19-year-old kid about some money that is owed. So I'm like, this sets the tone. Cool. Okay. People are pulling knives on children for money in the middle of the empty field. Delightful.
Yeah, in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. So what what I remember about his costume was that I thought it was like purple and black fluffy hat that seemed more like I saw him as like a monster. I was like, this guy's in his monster costume. And he told me at some point that he hadn't slept for 5 days and he had just been doing coke the whole time. So that's where his headspace was at. And he was organizing this whole thing, trying to like wrangle all the DJs and, you know, pulling knives on them or whatever. So, and he was the guy who had invited us there. So that was like I should have been probably more alarmed by that than I was. I was kind of like, a blessing and a curse for me in this lifetime is that I have pretty much a permanent set of rose-colored glasses that I wear in every situation, and it allows me to kind of like cruise through places where otherwise could have, you know, I think there's something about like really like looking at and focusing on the danger that can like attract it to you more, is what I'm saying.
I think we talked about this at that time because there was something about your energy that was like my life raft was attached to yours at some point because things got more troubling. As it was like 3 to 4 in the morning, I'm looking around and realizing everybody is in their cars and their cars are just running. And so I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what's going on. And I start to check in and realize, oh, it's like 30 degrees, if not less outside. It's freezing cold. And I'm just standing out here putting ice on an easel, like, oh, watching the ice crystals come, you know? And then you're kind of like keeping this permanent like balloon off the ground energy of like, you know, just kind of keeping it light, keeping it fun. We're having fun. You're like, hey, let's just keep having fun because you don't have a tent set up. You're not going anywhere. You're like, you know, we could go in the car, but let's keep it out here. We're gonna keep it light. And as we're out there painting, I remember clearly that guy, the monster, comes up to us. He's mumbling some very troubling things. I'm aware of it on one level and purposefully keeping it at arm's length because I'm like, you know, what good is taking that on going to do for me in my state? But I hear behind me this person go, that shit's too strong. We're going to the fucking hospital. And I was like, cool. That sounds like a bad time. Like going to the hospital at a time like this. I'm like, it's 5 in the morning. Why would you go to the hospital now? And then I'm like, it's starting to hit like, oh, this shit is too strong. The shit that I am is very strong. And I only ate a corner. So if anyone else here ate a whole tab or more, they're deep. And I was like, going to the hospital is gonna be bad news bears for all of us in the middle of an empty field, not really like, you know, in the lawless land. So I was like, ooh, big alarms going off. But I'm also like in the LSD superpower zone at that point where I was like, come what may. I'll be me. I'll be here. I will deal with it when it comes. So, you know, that was one of those troubling things I'll never forget where it just was like hitting me in waves of like, that shit's too strong. Go to the hospital. That shit, acid, too strong. Yes. Hospital, bad. And like,
no.
And I'm like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, who's driving? Who's good enough to drive to a hospital? Because it's not close. It's a long ways away. And so yeah, that was like the peak alarm of that night where I was like, oh my God, what are we doing?
Wow. Yeah. So a couple more notes of that about that night. Like I just want to revisit, like, first of all, how incredibly cold it was. It was like nobody, like at a certain point, me and Bryce were basically the only people outside because we were in the middle of a plain in May in Colorado and there was a constant wind. It was just like chill to the bone wind, and we're wearing all of the clothes that we have and literally like painting and dancing to stay warm and stay alive. Does that sound accurate?
Yes, because I remember how windy it was too, that we had to like tie the painting to the easel and tie the easel to the palette stage because they were like literally blowing away, and the only people awake were me, you, or outside were me, you, this girl that was like on the periphery of our trip the whole time, also on LSD, and then the guy who's playing the music, who just is like in literally his own world. I don't know how long he's been DJing. No one, like, I haven't even checked in with him. He's just playing the music. It never stops.
Yeah.
So it's just, that's all that was happening. And it's just like, yeah, so windy, so cold. I'm watching my paint turn into ice on the canvas and just kind of laughing at like, ooh, what is happening? Like, is this good? Are we safe? Are we good? Like, I don't know.
So that effect was really amazing though. And so also for context, the music was house music. So it was just like continuous, like, and like as we go round and round and round and round and like dancing and painting to stay warm, it's just like this beat in the background. And then like what was happening with paint was, I've never experienced that as a painter to this day, which was like, it seemed like it was drying, but it wasn't because it was drying, it was because it was freezing. And because the temperature was right around freezing, it was like, it was simultaneously like, I feel like it was freezing and thawing in a way, and it was giving the paintings this like crystalline shimmer of like, you know, the way that a painting looks while it's still wet and you're on psychedelics is like, it looks like a magical painting, right? There's like, there's a special power about it, and that's why like the next day when you wake up and you're no longer on psychedelics and it's no longer glistening, you're like, oh man, I thought I made a really cool painting, but it doesn't look the same anymore. What happened with my painting that night was really interesting, because I felt like I had absolutely nailed it. Like I just made this like this beautiful, like I remember you saying that you're like, we had it horizontally and we were looking down into it, and we had thrown all these like splatters of paint and stars on it, and you were like, Alec, do you know what you've done here? You've made a topographical map of the universe as seen from above. And I was just like, wow.
Yeah, I remember it having this whole effect. Yeah, we're like, you really did it. Like on accident, you accidentally mapped out the whole universe in 3D from God's eye point of view. Like, oh my God, you absolute wizard. Like, and it was done through this like very clown, like childlike joy of just putting paint on the thing. Make color, go here. And all of a sudden the result was just like, oh, you did a little fractal of what God did when he created the universe. Like, perfect. Of course. How could it be any other way?
Yeah, it was like, it was overlaid with the sacred geometric grid, or I should say the isometric grid. And somehow like the way that that grid was moving along with the stars and the paint splatters was giving us both that impression. Like we both understood that that was what had transpired here. And
oh my God.
and so I think I may have taken a picture of it, but what happened the next night was that I pushed it too far and I used too much paint, and I gave other people who were tripping a paintbrush that had too much paint on it. And I remember leaving to dance and do something else for a little while, and I gave somebody a paintbrush, and I come back and the whole thing is just like orange. It just like painted orange over like the entire universe that I had made, and I was like, oh, trickster, it's back at it again. Got me again. And that painting turned into the coyote painting, the coyote spirit animal, and also the cactopus dance party.
Yes. Okay. This is a whole thing with your paintings too. I remember that there would always be like some animal energy holding down the beginning of the painting, and then it would like transform, and other characters from some of your other paintings would show up for even just a little bit of the painting. Like, oh, it's coyote at the beginning, it's cactopus in the middle, orange sunshine after that. And yeah, I totally remember this now, because yeah, the whole thing was like trying to remember, like, hey, we have the animal, we have the coyote here, like we can't bury the coyote here, he's holding down the map.
He was, yeah, he did, and he was, and I can't remember if he was there at the start of that or not. I can't remember if that was a blank canvas I started with, but yeah,
I don't recall. Yeah.
You know, the symbolism of the coyote is very much about that trickster energy and things not being as they appear, and so that painting seemed like it was very very apt for that festival, and also for like, it continued to be like covered up and reimagined. Like I would I'll just like flip it over and paint something different the other way, and then like turn it back again and paint something different the other way. And it's it's something that, like, as I'm doing that, I should take more pictures so that I can at least like show the unfolding of it, because it's like an exercise in impermanence and non-attachment, but sometimes I still feel the attachment to like the the beautiful thing that I created and then destroyed. It's like,
I feel like I have some pictures from that night, just because I had like 5 pictures. I have like a photo of us trying to paint at like 5 in the morning. I have a photo in the morning as the sun came up, because we were awake for this, like the most beautiful sunrise when that happened.
yeah.
I remember standing in the middle of this field and looking at all these mountains with this like Tibetan Buddhist kind of like clouds around, and watching as like the darkest part of the sky went into the new sunrise, and just like in my acid brain being like, this is everything. And I had a picture of you juggling in the morning, because you were juggling like these light up balls.
Yeah.
And just like, I was starting to slip into this like weird heaviness in my trip throughout the whole night, because I was like coming down from being pretty drunk while I was still tripping. And so that chemical combination doesn't totally work out for pure harmony. And I remember you kept having to like pull me out with like, oh, look at me, I'm juggling. Like I took more LSD than you, and I'm having fun. Look at me. Like, and I remember like sitting in your car with you, and you kind of like giving me some food, and just kind of like being like, you gotta be easy on yourself when you do this, man. Like, look at me. I'm in the same sea of chaos as you, and I'm swimming. You gotta keep swimming. You must keep swimming. Keep it moving. Put the rose-colored lens on and just keep going. And I was burying myself with all sorts of silly ideas of shame and guilt and obligation. And I remember coming out, we'd like eaten some food, and it's starting to become like daylight. So other people that were maybe asleep had started to wake up, and we go out in this field, and there's a guy playing hacky sack on fire in the middle of like 11 in the morning, in the middle of this empty field, like in a Carhartt jacket, just playing hacky sack with a flaming hacky sack. And I have a photo of it, and it never fails to trip me out, because I'm just like, that's psychedelic. Like, what I do is a cartoon of psychedelia. That's raw. That's like Gonzo in the world shit.
Oh man, I don't even remember the flaming hacky sack part. That seems like something I should have noted.
You guys were totally chill with it. You and Max had shown up at that point, and you guys were like, oh yeah, flaming hacky sack, cool. And I was just like, what? Like, is that actually happening? Is anyone else actually seeing this, or is this just me and my chemical concoction here? Because it was just mystifying. I was like, yeah, that never fails to make me laugh. Now I'll find the picture and send it to you, because that cracks me up, man.
Yeah, I'd love to see those pictures. That was so. One more thing about that experience. Do you remember the skull clouds?
Oh yes, a sunrise.
So that was so weird. That was like, so it was a shared hallucination, because me and you and that other girl who was still awake we're all seeing the same thing, which was like it's a beautiful blue Colorado sky with these mountains in the distance, and we're looking up at these clouds moving, and they're like pretty fast moving clouds, so they're transforming before our eyes, and all the edges, like the fractal edges of the clouds, are all like forming and reforming these like skull faces, just skull patterns and skull patterns and skull patterns, like everywhere in the clouds. what the fuck?
Yeah, that was a weird one too, because I went from like this deeply like in this like ancient Buddhist feeling visuals in my thing, and I look up when we're laying in the field, and it's just skulls, like very bioorganic, sharp-edged LSD skulls. And that was a weird one. That one stands out. That was, I think, the last time I ever took LSD was that
really?
experience.
Wow.
So to this moment, I've jumped more in the mushroom world, so that one stands out as the like my farewell hiatus to LSD being those visuals, like skulls at the end, skulls at sunrise.
Wow. Well, I'm honored to have been there with you on the we'll not say final, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen that to this day, and I've done a fair amount of LSD in many different circumstances, and that was the only time. And I had this mental hallucination about it being like the energy that we were projecting up into the clouds from like our kind of like sort of seedy, dark, cocaine fueled festival that we're at. I was like,
yeah.
Is this us? Are we doing this to the clouds?
Yeah, I feel that it was like a created omen, and I would agree with the clouds on that one. There was like a darkness in that gathering that I haven't felt since, and that like as we talk about it, I'm like instant alarms. Like if I walked into that situation as this person now, I would be like, I am not going to do this. But there was just a certain level of like curiosity, obligation, and like the danger of it that made it just a little bit intriguing to see like, well, what happens next? I mean, within 10 minutes of being there, a guy pulled a knife on somebody, and a mere 12 hours later, a man is playing hacky sack on fire. Like, that being said, you stayed throughout more than I did. I left the next day. Like, as soon as I could drive, I like threw all my shit in my car and just like got out of there.
Right, yeah.
Because I was losing it. I was like didn't sleep. I was having weird like physiological effects happening with my eyes where like I couldn't see out of one of my eyes for like a couple hours in the day, and I was like, okay, I gotta go. Like there's nothing good for me here. And Mac showed up, and you guys were like, oh, we're gonna keep tripping and we're gonna keep going. And I was like, respect, I must leave.
Yeah, I remember. That was so Max showed up, and then we did another round together, like basically same thing but different the next night, and it was freezing once again. The wind did finally die down the second night, I believe, but like during that whole day, like after you left and for the whole entire day, it was just like this oppressive, like Colorado, open plains kind of wind that just would not stop, and everybody's in their cars, everybody's freezing. People had driven, as you said, from Michigan, like a really long distance to come to this place. And in Michigan, it was summer. It's like it was like warm and nice. And I remember this one. I remember selling a scarf to somebody because I had this like really beautiful. I travel with scarves. How many scarves does an octopus need? Anyway, I sold one. I think I sold like one print to somebody at that gathering as well, and then I sold a scarf, and that was the money I made for that experience, like $60 or whatever.
Oh yeah, I feel that I didn't sell a damn thing. I gave the guy who gave us LSD a painting I had, like because in my drunk state, I was like, I must make an equal energy exchange. Here, have this painting that I love. And he was just like, okay, cool. This reminds me, that's not the last time I saw you. I saw you at Sonic Bloom the year after that, because we were painting at Sonic Bloom, and I saw the guy who gave us LSD that night. He walks by me with a group of people and goes, oh, I remember you, man. Do you want to go smoke DMT? And I was like, no, but thank you. I am good here in my earth.
Dude, I'm pretty sure he gave me more of that acid at Sonic Bloom.
Yes, okay, this is all coming back because I remember hanging out with you there and having a much more even keel time on my end. That time I saw you.
Sonic Bloom is a lot more high vibe. I mean, there's definitely people are partying, but it's also like, man, the energy is so like positive and uplifting there. I've had some of the best weekends of my life at Sonic Bloom. That was actually the first time I ever live painted on psychedelics. And I made this hummingbird painting with this hummingbird like kind of shooting a laser beam into the center of the painting, which was like the Sri Yantra and the Taurus mandala, like the the emanations of sacred geometry in the center from the hummingbird's laser beam. And so as I was saying before, like what I do when I live paint is I actually spend a weekend dancing around my painting and, you know, turning strangers into friends and telling them stories. And so that weekend, what I did was I invited anybody who was coming past me or interacting with me to zap some energy into the painting. And so like literally hundreds of people just on their psychedelics, just coming by being like, and just like filling this painting with you know, glowing energy. And you can still see it in there. It's pretty cool.
So I forgot about that, because that's something that I think about all the time. Like to this day, if I hear the words hummingbird, it is linked to the idea of the hummingbird heart being very fast and sharp, like the laser beam. Because I remember you telling me the whole story, and it's always stuck with me. I think about it all the time, man.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. I love thinking about that too. The lightness of being, and also the ability to travel swiftly and directly in the direction of your nectar.
Yes, that tends to be the LSD goal as well at a festival. It's like I could fly around in all the flowers, but I got to find my flower, and I got to go right to the heart of the matter. You know, I will go fast. I'll come back and forth, but I got to keep my focus.
Focus that nectar.
Yep.
I mean, focus that energy. Focus the nectar.
Focus the nectar. You know, tell that to me when I'm tripping. Yeah, I'm like, but it's dripping everywhere.
This nectar is entirely unfocused.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I know that feeling well. Ah, yes. Bryce, you mean this puddle of unfocused nectar? You know, if only someone would direct me as a laser beam, and they're like, "Oh my God, he's taking too much."
All this nectar is just so generalized. It's vague.
Oh.
Don't know what to think of it. Yeah, Sonic Bloom, highly recommended for all you Colorado dwellers and non-Colorado dwellers. The mascot of that festival is the hummingbird. I had, on the way to Arise Festival, I had a funny experience with, well, my car broke down, which was not funny, but then, so I spent like 2 hours on the side of the road coming up to Evergreen. And I was just hanging out there, and I went to go pee on the side of the road, like over in the trees, and this hummingbird just came up to me like as I had my pants down, and it like did this like once over, like up and down my body while I had my pants down, and I was peeing, and I was like, what the heck? It was like a very, very intimate checkout from that hummingbird that, you know, and they just come out of nowhere. It's like 1 second there's no hummingbird, the next second, boom, they're right there.
They're giving you a little shaman scan, you know, focusing the nectar. They're like, this nectar is incredibly generalized. Let me just rearrange. Okay, and he's good.
Organize. Yeah, that was the day my engine died, and I literally on the way to Arise Festival had my car towed, had my friend pick me up on the side of the road, put all my art supplies and everything in her car, and I just had my car towed and went to the festival. like I'll deal with this on Monday. I got work to do.
I saw you at Arise, because I went to one day of Arise one of the years. So I saw you because I remember I went and painted a little flower on one of your paintings when you were having like people come and do a little thing. So this reminds me, I saw you at Arise probably that same time. But that was my hummingbird visit to you, where I was like, here, and check.
Focus the nectar, and I'm out of here.
Exactly. Oh man.
Yeah. So you're mentioning that the LSD is fading away, but you're having some connections with the mushrooms.
Yep, I just found them to be a grounding thing for me. So when I say that, some people get this instant reaction of like, what are you talking about? Like mushrooms, grounding? And it's like, well, when you live about 6 feet off the ground, sometimes, things that would make other people have a ladder are my chair. So taking microdoses of mushrooms always feels like this internal hug, like my body, the earth saying like, hey, come here, it's good. You're an animal, you're an alien animal in the meat suit dimension, and you're good, you're safe, we love you, you got this. And I didn't do mushrooms until after all of those LSD experiences. So it really came in this weird way where I was like, okay, I've gone to the height of the digital mystical mountain. And then mushrooms were like, yeah, time to go hug a tree, hippie. And so here I have been in the last 5 or 6 years, just experimenting with that plant ally itself. That and cacao have really come to the rescue for my soul.
Wow, cool. Yeah, I've been consuming those two things together quite often. Actually, I make mushroom chocolates with cacao and coconut oil and honey, and take a lot of micro doses of those. And I think something interesting about mushrooms is that you can have the grounding and you can have the blast off, like very much dose dependent. I think they have this potential to really like send you out into the cosmos, as they are like, and I think alien spirits, the spores of the mushroom can survive across the expanse of space. So they're organisms that have been able to like essentially achieve interplanetary travel. So there's like that spirit is in them, but then also like that seed, that spore is planted in the earth, and it grows, it grows down in the ground, and it grows from the like literal shit and like really down in the earth, so there's that kind of like cool dichotomy between the earthly and the cosmic.
I think that can be felt entirely in the mushroom experience, where you're like, you're like in the dirt of the earth experience, realizing how alien it is. But instead of LSD, which is like, okay, let's just send you all the way out of context, mushrooms tend to be like, look how alien everything around you already is. Like, no need to look deeply into something extra. Look at this tree. It's ancient and alien. And like, your comfortability with this earth is a subtle delusion that you think this is normal and casual and, old hat. No, Earth is where the alien things really are. And then mushrooms have that little DMT door, which you always feel like you're about to blast off at a certain dose. You're like, oh, I could just easily turn and just fall right into hyperspace if I just, did the right thing or took a little more. You're like, so it keeps you on your toes. You're like, ooh.
Have you ever gone over that edge, like taken the famed hero's journey, 5 dried grams in silent darkness?
No, because after my like 10, 15 hit acid trip, I became so sensitive. I think 2.5 to 3 grams is the most I've ever done on mushrooms. And I was just blown away by how strong that was, and was like, deep respect. I see this. We're good. I acknowledge the power. I'm going to start down at the bottom, and maybe in the future I will climb a little higher. But I've been enjoying just, I'll nibble a stem and I'm feeling it, where it's like my dose can be so small. I can look at a mushroom and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, does anyone else need a hug and feel a little bit sweaty? Like,
Some right up here, actually. I don't know.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah. So, I respect the dose. Hats off to people that can do the hero's journey, because like mushrooms, they're no joke. There's a feeling of immense power in there, and like in my worldview, there seems to be a spirit or an energy in mushrooms that has its own sort of trickstery wisdom element, and it seems to want to show certain things, teach certain things, gravitate towards certain experiences, and I respect that You know, it's not like it's not the non-specific amplifier of LSD. It's like, hey, buddy, let's come here and look at this. So, why aren't you a little bit nicer to all the people you love? What? How are you treating the earth? How are you thriving in your environment here with the people around you? And you're like, okay, ooh, yeah, didn't really want to come in here and look at that, but you know, we'll do it. It's cool.
Yeah, that's absolutely been my experience with the mushrooms. And sometimes it's pretty uncomfortable. It's like, oh, oh no. And like you said, it's like, oh, and now I have to look at that. And I was trying not to, I was trying to keep that under wraps in a way. And I think that's really one of the greatest powers of psychedelics is they have a tendency to bring things up to the surface that we need to look at.
Including good things. I had a mushroom trip that blew me away where I took a small dose, like a gram or so. And it was like, I'm just going to paint. I'm just going to make my art. I'm going to make my art. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to imbibe a chemical. I'm going to make great art. And I took them and I was sitting outside and all of a sudden I'm just looking at a flower. And I'm like, oh, the universe is art. And I didn't make this universe. And then it just, like I'd already felt the divine, but that one really snuck up on me. And then within 2 seconds, I'm just pouring tears of gratitude. Like, oh my God, I'm in the body of immense love to even be in this body on this earth. The divine has gifted us this experience where it held nothing back. If it unconditionally loves us. So it's like, you can have pain. You can have all the experiences. You're safe. You are held here. Like, you're going to die. You're going to get hurt. It's going to be hard, but you're safe. And that's the unconditional love of the divine. And it was an accident. I'm over here with my ego, like, oh, I'm just going to make trippy art. I'm going to be the greatest. And then here's, God in the corner of the room, like, hey, that's cool. But look at this. Look at where you're at. And all of a sudden I'm just like, oh, I can't even paint. I'm in the greatest art of all time.
You are. That's beautiful.
So, it can take you all the ways.
Yes. What's your have you experimented with asking the mushrooms questions at all?
Yeah. This was a big thing when I started taking them and realizing that mushrooms, like LSD insights for me personally, come as a direct knowing, which can sound, a little weird to people, I think, where it's like, I understand cognitive bias, all those things, but there's some things on LSD where it's just hitting you like, oh, everything's clicking. Mm-hmm. Mushrooms show you a lesson through your life events. It's not necessarily coming always in words. It's not like God exists. Instead, it's like, let me show you a lived experience where you can feel it and experience it. So your life events start to contort and conform and change to show you things. And it's not always in the experience itself. You can ask a question in the mushroom experience, forget about it, walk into your daily life, and all of a sudden you're living out this question and getting your answer in your life. At least I've experienced that sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really, really well put. And it's just, yeah, it's so funny how they'll show you things. Like they have so many different ways. It's like, like, how did you know, or how did you bring that about? Like, it's the interconnectedness is fascinating. And it's also like thinking about like, okay, is this entirely internal? Like, am I simply projecting all of this meaning onto the experience that I'm having? Or is there like, how much interplay is there with this other force? And with mushrooms especially, it feels like you're really having an exchange or a conversation with an entity, and a super intelligent entity.
Yes, and I think it brings up this feeling in me that sometimes isn't always a felt experience, which is we're on the edge of time. Like, we're not necessarily in a set thing that already has happened. We're on the edge of time, co-creating with this force of the universe. And mushrooms really highlight the brush in your hand, so to speak, of like, oh, you're painting, you're live painting your life as we speak. You know, like, well, look at what you've created. Look at what the colors are in front of you. Where I'll get so fixated in my daily life with being the victim of the world, being the victim of consciousness. Mushrooms have always helped come back and be like, look how much creative power you have here in this world. It is a total mystery zone up for grabs. And all it asks for is a little bit of respect and love on your end, and it will open doors for you. And the mushrooms always have a way of showing you that in the weirdest ways and bringing just this certain flavor to reality that you're like, ah, yes, I do recall.
Yeah, it can be so amusing sometimes and so silly, and then it can be so like serious and heavy, and it's like really a wide range of presentations coming out. Maybe a lot of potential places I could go from there, but I wanted to, we don't have a ton of time left, and I wanted to say, well, one more thing about that is that this podcast, the Super Connector podcast, is named partially in honor of the mushrooms and their status as super connectors. So I'm glad we tied that together.
Yes. Praise be to the mycelium.
Yes. Thank you, Father Toadstool. Thank you, Mama Mycelium.
Amen, dude.
Yeah, if things go well, and it seems you're on a pretty good path for it, you should be able to get inducted to my secret society at some point. But I can't tell you any more about it, and in fact, forget that I even mentioned it here.
Love it.
Next up, I wanted to get into your artwork, talk about the work that you're doing. I know that there's a piece behind you there.
Yeah, got this little guy. I'll try to turn a little bit. It's a little hard to see. I can take you with me for a minute here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this piece is in progress still, but this piece is I was doing these mask paintings for a little bit. I have like 2 or 3 different ideas I play with all the time. One of which being the mask, where I like build this like amorphous liquid spirit and then put this like psychedelic mask on top of them, or it could be considered their actual face. And this one being the only one I've done that has a light colored body. All the other ones I've done have a black body and are very dark with a colorful face. This guy is a little bit more light, but a little more intense in the face. He's got the weird flower peepers.
Yeah, pretty intense orange eyes there.
Yeah, a little intense. I kind of went full Shipibo with all my details and really brought in the like DMT mushroom energy to this painting of like this spirit that is like very confronting and holds lightness. And this has been an interesting mirror painting all the mask paintings, because they happen in a very specific thing for me. They're not like all my other paintings where I can like start and let it go. When a mask painting happens, it's kind of asking me like, hey, bring me home, bring me in here. Like I'm ready to come in. So this guy is taking a little bit of time to come through the labor, but yeah, he's coming. And they surprised me. I've had this painting staring at me in my space for a long time, and they have a weird energy when you make some. I'm sure, as you know, making a painting that has a face aspect has a very different energy than when I make a landscape or a non-specific space. So
yeah, your painting is looking back at you.
Yeah, and then I have this painting which I've been working on here.
Ooh, cool. Yeah, very different feeling on that one.
Yeah, very, very bright. And
cool.
Yeah, just doing this mixture, going back and forth between landscape, weird amorphous astral object, and then the beings. And
the astral objects.
Yes, the old astral objects where it's just, I kind of like call it like a purge of sorts, like the side effect of an emotional purge, because of the way, as I'm sure you do, where you paint so loose in the beginning and then tighten it up. But that initial feeling of just, what does the brush do? What is color doing to my consciousness? Before I ever get the mind involved, even with the mask paintings starting that way, where it's like, here's just raw feeling, here's raw data, here's me shaping it, and now it's got a life of its own. And it's out of my hands, out of my house, beyond my energy. And
yeah.
It's, even if they stay with me physically, you know, there's a point where a painting is painted, and it is born, and I don't have the same ownership over it as I do when I'm creating them.
Yeah, it's not a painting anymore, it's a painted.
Exactly. And, you know, I'm still learning how to paint. I always feel that way, that like every painting I make is a pure exploration into how to paint as much as it is me creating.
Cool.
Music being my primary art form until I found painting like 5 years ago. I'd always like doodled and done watercolors, but taking psychedelics at festivals and seeing other live painters with the acrylic game, just that opened a whole door to me that changed my life, where I was like, I feel called to do this. The phone is ringing, I'm answering, time to go make a mess.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think those festivals and psychedelics are really creating a lot of artists, or at least like waking up a lot of artists, because when you spend that much time like at one, like sometimes you're at a festival for a week or longer or more than that, and you're spending like, you know, if you do 1 or 2 psychedelic trips during that time, it's a long time. And what I found is it's really grounding and really helpful to have something that you're actually doing and creating, as opposed to like just wandering and like looking for more ways to party, or like, you know, you can't spend the whole weekend dancing. Like you have to you have to do something else. And I've always found my paintings that I'm working on to be like very, it's like an anchor almost, like it's my anchor into like the, you know, physical reality. As like you said earlier about you said something about like having an impulse and putting it into form. Was that, what were the words you used there?
Yeah, you know, you're like taking raw data, just raw non-specific thoughts and feelings, amplifying them and putting them into form, and then slowly like making it more and more solid. In painting, no matter what you're painting, you know, or no matter what your style is. I feel like that would be the same for all artists, even non-visual artists. But, you know, since we're painters, I can speak to that.
Yeah. Well, I like to think about this visual artwork paintings as a crystallized vibration, and then music, for instance, is like this moving, this ever-changing vibration. And the combination of them also with psychedelics that you find at these festivals is like, it's, you know, it's just like a feast for the senses. It's incredibly powerful, and it can like really bring you into so many different places. Like you said, kind of like sometimes you're just in the water, like in the ocean, along for the ride, lost in the sauce. And then you're like, you know, other times you're like really creating some corner of the experience with your crystallized vibration that you're putting out. Or
yes, and like, you know, I think because I came to painting through psychedelics and festivals, there's always been this link of music and art. But like painting, even when I paint now, I call it the life raft, because it's just this tether. It's both a tether to this world and the other world, and it's a way to stand in between, and, you know, paint a stained glass window between dimensions, where music can be this, like, it can be the spaceship, and it can be the nostalgia, it can be the memory itself, it can bring you in and out. Painting is just like so fixed as an object, as this two-dimensional earth object, that it's hilarious. When you're tripping and painting, there's this feeling of like, me, the space monkey, painting my silly little images, my little pictures, like on this piece of wood and paper and canvas, like, oh, this great thing I do. And then, you know, I've had paintings save my life during trips at festivals where I went up to paintings and was like, this is the only thing that is holding me together right now in the external world as the internal sauce ocean is roiling. These paintings are the thing that is like holding me down as a tether. And I was like, I just have to do this. Like and you know, fool's journey ever since. Here I am.
It's a joyful journey. That's a really cool perspective there. The life raft. I think a lot of people really feel that way. I've noticed, like, I've definitely very frequently noticed like the pull of trippers and people who are like wandering lost in the festival, like looking for some type of connection, and they'll come up to a painting and just be like, oh, thank God, like thank you. And it's so like, it's so visceral and so powerful to like, you know, to like watch somebody have that experience with an artwork that you've created, or even with an artwork in general. Like it's literally brought me to tears quite a number of times with the beauty of the experiences that come about with that combination. And I wanted to say also, with regards to that, I had this memory come up about, I was at Enchanted Forest Festival in Mendocino, I think, California. And I had like, a lot of times at festivals, I didn't get into the gallery. I would just like get into the festival in whatever way I could. I would show up with my easel and I would just paint and sell my prints and, you know, make some money and have fun. And that festival, I was actually in the gallery. So I felt like more, you know, really like included in the experience. And I showed up early and kind of made friends with all the other artists who were showing in the gallery, which was a cool way to like build into the festival. Is kind of like setting up and making this thing together. And then Friday comes along and you can kind of all like party and let loose a little bit, but also like be in the gallery together. And so Friday night I spent working, and then Saturday night I was with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. And I didn't know actually, but at that time she was probably like 2 days pregnant. So one of the first things that our child did was come to this festival with us.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. And so Saturday night I wanted to spend it with her and not work. So we took some LSD together and we went to this, you know, we just went all around like looking at the cartoon characters and interacting with them all and just like laughing and having so much fun. And we come back into the gallery and just like still kind of in the peak of our experience. And I came in and I was like, I saw all these people, like these artists who I've been making friends with in the gallery, like showing their works to people and describing them, you know, explaining their creations. And I literally just walked in and I started crying, and I was like, oh my God, like this is just so beautiful. And I'm so thankful to be a part of this. And I realized that like, that each one of those experiences was like essentially like the God self, the divine self, leaving a little like gift or a surprise for the God self to find and discover and be like, wow, like your God self created this for me as a gift, and for you as a gift. And we're just like leaving these like surprises for each other that are wrapped up in these various forms of creation. And I also looked at this painting that I had made, that it was in the gallery, and it was something that ended up being the painting that I used to propose to my wife. And it was like we were just like hugging and kind of like having this psychedelic experience together and looking at the painting together. And I think in that moment when I was looking at that work, I realized that I'd had the inner knowingness of our child. I was like, oh, like, wow, we're really doing this together. Like here we go. It was like the full acceptance, you know, like
Yes. Yeah.
I think when I first met her, I really did have that knowingness, but then there was like another level of like, wow, we're really in this together. Like we're taking this journey together. So yeah, you just reminded me of that story, so I thought I'd share it.
Oh, it's beautiful, man. Breadcrumbs to the beyond, you know? It's like, you know, I leave the window cracked. All the artists leave the window cracked. So they're like, remember? And they're like, ah, yes, thank you. Back to it. You know, nothing like a little visionary art, LSD, and to activate your inner knowing with somebody. You know, talk about old friends right away. You're looking at your like future family in its seed form and being like, oh, I knew this, I felt this, but now we know this.
We know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, initially, the mushrooms brought us together in their super connector way as well. So.
Yes.
That was another side note there.
It's beautiful, man.
I wanted to bring up something before we go, just talking about this idea of manifestation and the law of attraction. Have you spent much time thinking about these things?
I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, maybe like less time than that, putting it into concrete practice, but it's something I am aware of. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I think you know, as an artist, you're kind of like very literally doing it all the time when you create something. But I think something the mushrooms have been showing me and various other things is kind of this way that we can do it with almost every aspect of our lives. Essentially, like with our thoughts and our intentions and our actions, creating the reality that we're existing in. And for me, I think this is a big part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast, and a big part of my message that I want to share is that we're not just along for the ride, but we're actually like, we're in the river, but we have a ship, we have a boat that we can drive different way. We can choose how we decide to travel down the river. And I think a big part of my message here on this earth is to keep broadcasting that out there over and over again, because it's like we keep forgetting and we keep needing to remind each other. That's like the game that we're playing, the same with our divinity, is like we forget, and then we're like, oh yeah, like look at this beautiful painting, like listen to this beautiful music, like this is a divine creation in a sense.
This is cool. This links back to the whole thought at the beginning of like being the victim of consciousness itself. It's like, no, we're on the cutting edge, the forefront of consciousness. It's a gift, it's a blessing, and it's a creation. It's a generalized nectar. You know, you can shape that nectar into the laser beam of your choosing. And you know, if you're lucky enough, you can, like I have been, you can learn manifestation in reverse, where you realize, like, I called this in. Oh, I wished for this thing. And then I forgot about it. And all of a sudden I'm living it out, similar to asking the mushroom a question. And all of a sudden here I am living an answer. It's like so much of my life I've called something out from my heart, which is a very hard thing to put into words, but, you know, put this intention into the universe and then walked on the path and just pulled that reality into my world in a way where I almost forget that it never was, it was any other way. It was like, oh, of course, I'm living in my, you know, in a good day, living on the heart's frequency, pulling my reality to me, shaping it up, reacting to the thing as it's being shaped, doing the next one. So I feel that. I feel manifestation works best for me as an artist a little bit in like a hindsight rearview mirror way, where I just walk forward with my intentions on the path, And then occasionally I look at a painting or see something in my reality that reminds me like, oh yeah, I called that in. Like it worked. Manifestation works. Like can't get too hyper fixated on it. Got to just keep moving. Keep, keep swimming in the sea.
Yeah, I think there's a real gentleness to the way that is most effective. If you try and like pull and grab and like, oh, I need to make this happen, it's like too much effort. But then there's like another thing you can do, which is like that ease and grace and flow of creation that brings it to you easily, the thing that you're calling in. And you reminded me when you said that, is that this podcast itself is actually that, which is that I asked for a new art form where I could express myself in a way that was more interactive, and that could be more widely distributed, and that could really explore a lot of different ideas and stories, because doing that with painting can be very slow. So it's like, I appreciate that slowness and the stillness of it, but I also asked for this and called it in. So it's cool to wrap that back around.
You're a storyteller at heart. It's good to have your voice out there, because you have a very fascinating way of looking at things that are just in the world that, it's really cool, man. I like the podcast, makes a lot of sense to me with your personality. I'm like, yes, give the storyteller his stories, And it's nice to share. Thanks for letting me come in here and talk about some of my favorite silly things.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you coming. And also, yeah, I feel the same way about you. I think you have a really poetic and interesting way of looking at the world, and you have a very you have a strong way with words. Like you have the the silver tongue of Mercury.
Yeah, that Mercury in Scorpio, just a little bit cutting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I have Saturn in Scorpio. That's my. Ooh. That's why I get so serious sometimes in this radio.
The whole narwhal diving deep thing goes well with that.
Yeah, no doubt about that. That's pretty much the only water I have in my chart, actually, as well as the Scorpio cusp, and then Saturn in Scorpio. So it can be hard to access my emotions sometimes. People are like, how are you feeling? Like, what are you feeling right now? And I'm like, I just, I don't know. What I'm thinking.
The Libra Aquarius thing there mixed with that, you're like, well, let me check in, and then just fall down into the deepest part of the ocean and come back up like, check back in a minute.
Yeah, the Libra Aquarius combo is definitely very much the mental explorer, exploring the realms of the intellect.
No, you always strike me as someone with a good heart, man. It's really it's awesome to see you have your family and like bringing another person through your lineage into this world of playfulness, man. She's gonna have a good upbringing. I can feel it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a really amazing experience so far. What a wild ride, man.
Of course.
It's so much joy and a lot of challenge too.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
I underestimated the mental challenge or the mental toll of just crying, having somebody crying around you all the time. Just it's so intense, and it's she's our baby and we want her to be happy and feel good, but we also need to be present there with all of her emotions and just kind of be there to ride out the storm as she goes through, as I think you would put it, is this shock of being in a body. Oh my God, I'm in a body again.
Yeah, exactly, dude. It's gonna be weird being two sensitive people holding down that energy of openness, it's like, that's going to go straight laser beam into the heart. But there's some deep trust that being made some sort of conscious decision to come in that specific doorway. And I think it'll be good, man. I even in my shock of being in a body, there's a deep gratitude for being in this specific body in this specific place that
Right.
never leaves. It's like, well, at least it's this one, and at least I'm around these humans. So
Yeah.
she'll come around. When the nectar of her being gets a little more specific and focused.
Yeah, she chose that one for sure, and she chose us for a reason. So, and she was like, "Now, I'm ready now." We're like, "Whoa, okay."
I know the feeling, man. I was born 3 months premature. I came in here running. I was in a hurry.
Oh wow,
So.
You were wow, coming in hot.
Coming in hot, dude.
I was a C-section baby and born in the last hour of Libra. So there was some sort of like literal intervention that was like, hey, you're a Libra. You may have a little Scorpio in you, but you're coming out in Libra.
And you're coming out with a little drama. So the Libra Scorpio drama was set from the very beginning,
Yeah, no doubt. LSD.
Let's start dancing.
Yeah, long Saturday discussions.
Oh, man.
Not Saturday, but I said it already, so can't take it back.
Beautiful.
Yeah, well, I'm running out of time. I'd love to do this again sometime. I want to talk to you more about your artwork and your music as well. Just hear some more tales from your side of the world. So thanks so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Of course, man. Thank you so much.
All right. Peace. Much love, brother. We'll see you soon.
Sounds good, man.
See you soon. All right.